What's going on, guys? So today's video is going to be in a little bit different order than the previous video where I tested the suspension hitches. So in front of me, you were looking at the one hitch that didn't make it to the test last time because I didn't have one. The folks over at AirSafe were gracious enough to send me one of their heaviest duty versions of this hitch. This is actually a Class 7 hitch. This thing is rated at an insane 25,000 pound trailer weight capacity and 2,500 pound tongue weight capacity. This is going to be really interesting to test this out. So for today's test, we're going to do it a little different than we did it last time. Let me explain. Hang tight. I'll be right back. Okay, so the test today is going to be with the Texas Pride trailer. Again, we're going to have about 1,500 pounds worth of tongue weight resting on the back of the truck. I'm going to go in a different order. I guess the order really doesn't matter because in editing I can change the order of any of these. But since I already have the Shocker HD on the back of the truck, we'll start with this one. I have my really cool little sensor right here, and this is going to be a sensor that detects motion, g-force, acceleration, all of that stuff. And we're going to have this mounted to the trailer frame itself, right up front on the A-frame, so we can actually perform this testing in a way that truly matters, I think, to why people get hitches like this. They want to reduce the wear and tear on the trailer that they're towing. If it's an RV especially, right? All that shock, all that vibration, all of that stuff that transfers from the truck to the trailer, especially when you have a truck with really stiff rear suspension, can be pretty jarring. And it can actually cause damage to the front A-frame section. So a lot of folks with Airstreams and other high-end travel trailers opt for these AirSafe style hitches and these Shocker style hitches because they really want to reduce that shock that transfers from the truck to the trailer, and that's exactly the goal of these. So the goal here is going to be to put a shock sensor right on the front A-frame, right in that section right there, right at where most of the shock would be occurring. We're going to test 4 different hitches today. The hitches that we're going to test are going to be the Shocker HD, the AirSafe, the Gen Y 16,000 pound rated version, so that's going to be the much lighter duty version, and we will also include a non-suspension hitch. So we'll have a Gen Y hitch in there that is non-suspension, just so we can have kind of a baseline as well, just to compare. It really just matters that we gather the data and we can do a side-by-side comparative analysis. Anyways, this is going to be interesting. I need to make sure that everything I'm using is going to be set up properly for this test though, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time before I get into the towing aspect of this so I can make sure that everything is calibrated the way it needs to be, and I can get the data actually going to the device via Bluetooth from this in a way that actually is usable. So I'm going to work on that for a little bit, then we'll hitch up and take off. Okay, so we are completely connected to the Shocker HD hitch. You see we have the bag filled up to the point to where this is compressing about 1/8 of an inch. So we're not just letting it touch like we did last time, we're compressing it just a little bit more than that. We have the Demco coupler. Like I said, we are right at about actually 1,400 pounds worth of tongue weight on this trailer. And it might actually be a little heavier because we got a little bit of rain and the sand in that bag is wetter than it was. So we may be just a little bit heavier. We have the shock sensor right here, magnetically attached to the very front section of the A-frame. And this should give us a very good readout of how the Shocker performs. So again, we're going to do this test with all of them. I'll walk through some of the setup steps when we get to the AirSafe. I made full videos on each hitch that we're using, except the AirSafe. So I want to be sure that I definitely give it its due time so you can kind of see how it works and what's going on with the setup process. Yeah, we're just going to hit the road on these. I'm not going to actually talk while we're driving, but I'll probably do a voiceover when everything's said and done. The big difference is the fact that I haven't tested the AirSafe, and we moved the shock sensor location from inside of the cab to the actual trailer where I think most people would expect it to be. So regardless of the order we do this in, we will test them all the hitches in this video out, and then I will put the analysis next to each other so you guys can see just how each one performs. So we'll get a GoPro mounted so you can see the hitch in motion and what it's doing, and we'll hit the road. Okay, so we made it back. We've taken off the previous hitch. The next hitch is on, and that hitch is the AirSafe Hitch. So this is I think it's the biggest one they make, a Class 7 hitch. This thing is absolutely insane. Me and a buddy of mine moved it over here, about 110 pounds worth of hitch. I relocated the ball slightly lower just so it can level out the trailer whenever we're on it. And what I've been told to do is add some air to the airbag, at least from the instructions that I read, just so I guess you don't bottom out the airbag whenever you transfer the load to it. And then I'm going to add air to the Schrader valve on top so the bars are perfectly straight and they're not tilted up like you currently see them. Once I load the trailer weight on, of course it's going to want to compress the bag, but then the goal here ultimately is that whenever we dial it in, we'll have the bars perfectly straight. And that is supposedly the position you want to be in when you're ready to tow. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to get the truck backed up, hitched up to the trailer, and we'll make sure that there's enough air inside of that bag so it doesn't completely deflate. Basically, we'll follow the instructions and air it up appropriately, and then we will add the appropriate amount of air to level out the bars so we can take this thing out on the road and use the shock sensor on there to see if this performs better than the other hitches we've tested. I'm saying the other hitches because I don't know what order I'm actually going to show this to you in, but the last hitch we actually tested was the Shocker HD, so it's going to be really interesting to see how this one feels in comparison to that one. It is definitely a huge hitch. I mean, it looks almost like I have a generator hanging off the back, but we hope that this thing performs as well as they say. So let's get to it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and drop the ball down onto it. I just got off the phone with one of the gentlemen at AirSafe and just made sure we're following all the correct steps, which we are. Once we drop it down, we'll add air just like we talked about earlier, so these bars are level with the ground. Okay, so the bars just about level to the ground, aren't they? If you want to wonder who's behind the camera, that's Luis with the Ram. Unfortunately, his truck got into a bit of a fender bender, so he's on the hunt for a new truck. How's that hunt coming?
It's long and difficult.
Does that look pretty level to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're going to chain everything up and we are going to hit the road. We have the shock sensor already on here. Let's see how it performs. Okay, so one quick note before we hit the road. This thing sticks so far off the back of the truck that I was afraid of plugging the 7-way directly into the back in fear that if I turned it would catch the hitch and rip it off. So I have a little 1-foot or 18-inch extension actually right there that's going to give me the extra slack I need just to make sure that when I do execute a turn, I don't accidentally snatch the 7-way connector out. I need to make sure my Demco is latched in place. We'll get everything going at that point. So I'm going to be honest with you guys, that was a pretty pleasant experience. I honestly felt as if it was a smoother ride than the other hitches that I've tested. Now, I don't know if that's going to be accurate based on the shock sensor, but we'll see. When we look at the shock sensor data and we see specifically how each one performed, we'll ultimately know. But now that it's on the trailer, though, we're not necessarily measuring the shock to the truck. But again, that was a really pleasant towing experience. I was pretty surprised by how smooth that was. Anyways, once we pull the data, we'll have a better understanding of how it actually impacted. But let's go ahead and get this one removed and throw on the next hitch. Okay, so now we have a Gen Y Boss that's next up. This is the 16,000 pound towing version with the 1,700 pound maximum tongue weight capacity. This is an interesting one because if you guys recall, when we did the 2,000 pound tongue weight test, we used the 21,000 pound rated version that can support up to 2,500 pounds worth of tongue weight capacity, and we had roughly 2,000 pounds resting on it, and those little spring bars did not rotate at all. I mean, if they did, just barely. On this one, however, with 1,400-ish pounds worth of tongue weight, they definitely rotated down slightly, so I think we're going to have a much more visual opportunity to see how this thing's moving under weight as we tow it down the road. I did still need to keep the little extension cable on here because it sticks so far off the back that if I don't, again, I kind of risk binding up the cord and tearing it off, which I definitely don't want to do. But we are hitched up, ready to go, and we're going to see how the Gen Y Boss 16,000 pound rated version with 1,700 pounds worth of capacity performs towing the trailer. So let's hit the road. Okay, so we're back, and there were periods of time while towing with this that I thought it was actually feeling very similar to the air suspension, but then there were a few times where you could definitely tell it was a little bit more jarring. And again, I had Luis in the car with me, and he was basically telling me the same thing, that, yeah, right in this area, it definitely felt like there was a little bit more shock happening versus dampening like we felt with the hitch prior to this. But we're going to take this one out and we're going to do the last hitch. And the last hitch we're actually going to evaluate here is going to be one with no shock absorption built into it at all. We're going to put a standard Gen Y Mega Duty hitch on here just so we can get a baseline to see how, how it actually tows with a standard hitch on it versus these suspension hitches that we've already tested. So let's go ahead and knock that one out, and then we'll talk about the results. Okay, so we are hitched up to the 32,000 pound rated Gen Y Mega Hitch. This thing is absolutely a crazy beast. This is going to be our baseline, so we get a good evaluation on what it was like without anything. Now, I have the anti-rattle collar there, but it's not tightened down. It's actually completely loose, because I'll tighten it down when we get back, because I wasn't using any type of anti-rattle equipment on the other hitches, so I want to make this as fair as possible. And in all fairness, it actually wouldn't work on a few of the other hitches, specifically the shocker hitch, because of how the airbag is positioned, you wouldn't be able to put this on there. Anyways, we're going to hit the road. We're going to get another reading and see how this one performs. This is going to be our baseline, so we get a good evaluation on what it was like without anything. Anyways, we're going to hit the road. We're going to get another reading and see how this one performs compared to the other hitches that all have suspension built into them, whether it's rubber torsion or it is air. Yeah, we're going to see how they compare to one without any. So let's hit the road. Okay, so we have wrapped everything up. I have not had a chance to compile the data, but I will compile it and you will probably see it throughout this video, hopefully. But that said, I can tell you right off the bat, I felt like the AirSafe Hitch was the smoothest, but it's going to be interesting to see what the results are from the data that we actually pulled off of each one of the, or after each one of the hitch evaluations. I'm really excited to see this because you could definitely tell there was a difference between some of them. I felt like if we're going from last to first, Gen Y was probably the least effective in dampening the shock, but again, who knows until we look at the data. And then Shocker, and the most effective was the AirSafe. So once we pull the data, we'll see. But this is gonna be a really interesting video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I know I didn't go through the same comprehensive analysis of every single hitch as I was doing it last time. But again, I'm not gonna make this into a multi-hitch series. We just wanted to try to get the data, compare it side by side, and see what the verdict was. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. If you could, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.